Greetings everyone and welcome back to a new video. I would like to address like what is a general strategy you could be using in the early game, and then how does that transition into the late game, because there has been a lot of discussions about what constitutes a good building. I have released a few videos talking about what's the worst buildings in the game and the best buildings in the game, and in those videos I'm saying that this building isn't very good, or this building is very good, this building is very efficient, and so on. So I would like to go into like what do I mean when I say that this building is very efficient, or this good is very efficient to produce. And there's been a lot of discussion about what is a why is this building bad? Is this building actually good? Like art academies, why aren't they good? And because I bashed them so much in my latest video. And why are sawmills? Why is sawmills my favorite building, even though there are like manufacturers that produces more profit and whatnot? I would like to do an overarching kind of general strategy guide. Like what is the most important thing in the early game, and how does this differ from your what you should be prioritizing in the late game or the mid game, because those can be very different from each other, and how you need to look at your economy a bit differently and value different buildings and different production methods and different kind of how you just strategize about your economy and what you should be building and what you should not be building, depending on your stage in the game and your position. Fair warning, there are some spreadsheets in this video, referring back to the construction efficiency spreadsheet that has been provided by Generalist Gaming. And if you guys are not into spreadsheets or trying to understand it, I know there's been a couple of you that have been asking for it in my other videos as well. If you're not kind of into that stuff, I implore you to use this timestamp to skip ahead in the video and just to focus on the early game versus the late game discussion, and yeah, kind of ignore all of the more math heavy spreadsheety stuff. This spreadsheet is done by a fellow called Generalist Gaming, a content creator for Victoria 3 among other things. He is absolutely awesome. You totally go check him out. He produces a lot of good Victoria 3 content. I think we first need to establish what do I mean when I'm talking about an efficient building. I am essentially referring back to this number here. This is the construction efficiency figure, calculated by using the costs of the input of the building. So a sawmill, for example, you take the total costs of your inputs. So 5 tools, for example, let's find sawmills here. It should be around 100 construction efficiency. Yeah, so sawmills uses 5 tools to produce 60 lumber, softwood, and this spreadsheet assumes base price. So at base price of both tools and softwood, which it just means that if you take the total profits of a building, like minus the profits minus expenses, and then you divide that by how expensive it is to construct, you get this. That's this efficiency number here. Like how much value do I add per construction point used? Which means that a building that is very cheap to construct will actually look like it's very, very efficient. Sometimes it is very efficient, like rubber plantation, for example, it is very cheap to construct, and it uses very little input. It uses some motor engines, I think, to produce a lot of rubber, which is at base price is decently expensive. So rubber plantation is an amazing building. You might also, the thing that is this can be rather deceptive, because farms, rice farms then in particular, looks like it's the best building in the game, but farms are deceptive because there are a couple of reasons why you don't want to do this. You don't want aristocrats to get wealthy and powerful, which they will if you build farms, because that's the pop that owns them. They will support the landowners and regenerate the more conservative elements in your government, and it will be harder to move into more progressive, like economic laws, like interventionism, laissez-faire, move out of serfdom, and move out of slavery, and like get into and eventually just get into like more democratic institutions. Removing arable land is also what that does. It deletes some subsistence farms, which means that there are peasants that are producing small amounts of goods on that land already. That production just it gets deleted, it ceases, and those pops gets unemployed to work in these farms instead. This is bad because these subsistence farms actually increases your they increase your economy, maybe a bit, like not by very much, but by a little, and they mainly produce like basic goods like food. So by constructing farms, you are also deleting some economic output. So this number can be a bit deceiving, because you're actually like this number really needs to be subtracted some amount of value, because you are not producing all of this value. You're actually removing some value in your economy as well. This is particularly important to remember with rice farms, because rice farms removes rice paddies. It's what they call it's the subsistence farms in parts of Asia that uses rice, and that rice paddies actually employ double the amount that a rice farm does. So you actually gain unemployment by constructing rice farms, which is very dangerous. So you should, even though rice looks very nice, it is a bit deceptive. This is something that is common for general agriculture products, like if we do an exemption for the plantations, because those are those are kind of the exception to the rule. But like wheat farms, maize farms, millet farms, rye farms, vineyards, livestock ranches in particular are pretty bad. All of those that delete arable land, you should be careful of. But other than that then, so why should you look to be building efficient buildings? And now we come to the part of the early game versus the late game. In the early game, you have mainly 4 broad goals, 4 prioritizations. Those are to de-peasantify your population. You want your population to be moving from being peasants on subsistence farms to be in your factories that are better paid, they get a better wage, so they can consume more goods. So you can start to build a consumer economy. You do not do this by building farms or building so you destroy the subsistence farms. You do this by constructing other buildings that will draw the peasants. They will quit their job from their subsistence farms and will start working in the factories instead to get a better wage. Not by destroying the subsistence farms, but by giving them a better job. You want to actually to be leaving subsistence farms so that you have a lot of unused arable land. Unused arable land will increase your migration attraction, which will give you more pops, which will increase your economy in the long run. We'll be getting into that later. Your second goal is to increase political clout for interest groups that you care about. These are in general, if you're doing like a optimized, like a more of a progressive run, you want to be increasing the political clout of the intelligentsia and the industrialists. Mainly the industrialists. You want to be getting into a better economic law, mainly interventionism or laissez-faire. Those are the most important ones. Politically, you have a couple of, just speaking from an optimal gameplay sense, some of these priorities are already, you don't need to care about them. If you're playing right, like Prussia, for example, Prussia already has interventionism, which is one of your main priorities, like getting off traditionalism, which is just, it is just bad. Traditionalism has no like even role play value. Like traditionalism is just in the game to make it harder for the player. There's no other reasons for it. Some of these, like agrarianism or like cooperative ownership and being more communist, or like laissez-faire versus interventionism, or like gameplay choices, like how do I want to form my economy. Traditionalism is just meant to be bad for the player, to be hard, and to not really have any benefits compared to the rest of them. So getting off traditionalism is one of it. Traditionalism has some major debuffs. Taxation capacity, investment pool contribution is a huge one, and market access price impact, or MAPI. This means that if you produce something, say in Russia for example, if I produce some coal or iron in the Urals, which I want to use in my industrial centers, say in Moscow or St. Petersburg, I will do that at a huge debuff, because it will be the prices will be very local. So the prices will be very cheap in Perm. They will not make a lot of profit, but it will be expensive in Moscow, because like all of the iron is not essentially getting to Moscow. So iron will be expensive in Moscow, so that it will be expensive for like your steel industry, and it will be cheap in Perm, and so they will not be getting a lot of profit. So getting more market access, MAPI, it is very important. You get that mainly through getting off traditionalism, and then through technology like the stock exchange and some other technology. So getting into more progressive laws, those are like, there are some that are optional and just nice quality of life, but the most essential ones is, if you are on serfdom, you need to get off serfdom as soon as possible. If you are on slavery, you need to get off slavery as soon as possible. And if you are on traditionalism, you need to get off of traditionalism as soon as possible. Those are your three main priorities politically. If you're playing a more backwards country like Russia, Persia, China, and so on, Brazil, and so on. If you are playing a more like backwards country, those are and slavery obviously for the US. If you are on those laws, your main prioritization is to get off those laws, and the power of the landowners in the early game is very, very strong. one of the only ways to make them lose their like original power is to mainly in your capital, because those have a bonus to this political clout contribution. Just build buildings that employ capitalists and those who support the intelligentsia. So that means building manufactories, building mines, building logging camps if it's on sawmills, and for the intelligentsia mainly just building universities. That is one of the only way to like increase your political clout and to get off these horrendous laws. So that is depacify your population, increase political clout for your intelligentsia and industrialists to get off some very horrible laws and get into better laws like interventionism that you can use your investment pool to build more buildings, which will make the snowball run even faster. The third one is that you want to be starting to make a construction-based economy instead of a economy based on peasants. So you want to be obviously constructing more and more to kind of to make sure that you are growing kind of exponentially, which means that you need to support this growth of your construction sector by producing the stuff that your construction sector use. This is mainly iron, wood, or steel, depending on if you are on iron frame, and if you're on steel frame, or if you're using the first production method. So you want, and if having a large construction sector obviously also increases the price of these goods, which will make it a very profitable building, which will give your it is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, a loop of your capitalists and your people will earn a decent wage because the state is extracting taxes to re-inject it into the economy, with providing them with high wages and high profitability in those buildings that it uses sawmills and use like sawmills and iron mines and steel mills. So you kind of want to be like, this is you build more of these buildings, you use all of the profits from these buildings to be increasing the construction sector. You use more of these materials, so you need to be building more sawmills and more iron mines. And this goes on for quite a while. So you can build an economy that is almost entirely based on your just construction sector. You want a construction sector that can support itself, and that can be, when you move on into the late game, you have the resource economy to be constructing whatever you want to be constructing. The last thing is what I already touched this somewhat, is to build buildings that will increase your investment pool contribution. So this means building buildings that are mainly capitalist owned, because capitalists have a modifier of being better they have an investment pool contribution buff larger than any other pop in the game. So having buildings that employ capitalists is the best way of increasing your investment pool, which is the best way of getting essentially free construction. So not only do you want to be building buildings for like sawmills, for example, that will increase the wealth and political strength of your capitalists, giving them all of that money is also good because they will be in the private construction sector. They will be building buildings on their own, So if I let the game run for a bit, yeah. The capitalists are now building an artillery foundry in North Rhine without me doing anything. They are using the construction sector to and completely funding through this investment pool. They're funding this building on their own without me paying for it. So having capitalists will increase the amount of like private construction that goes on in your economy, which is good for you. You want to be, because it essentially free growth that the state doesn't need to pay. So those are the four main factors you should be considering in the early game. To depacify your population, not by building farms, but by building mainly mines and sawmills that are very efficient building, that are cheaper to construct than factories, that will give your people like a decent wage decently fast. Like building a sawmill is about 50% of the cost of building a factory. So you can build sawmills in the same time that you build a general factory. Building a steel mill takes, you can build 4 sawmills in the same time that you build 1 steel mill, which means that you can employ 4 times the amount of pop. You can be producing 4 times like the amount of lumber you can be in terms of like steel equivalent. So producing lumber is actually very, very good for you. That's why I keep like hammering the point that sawmills is kind of the best building in the game. Not logging camps on used with the used with simple forestry, mind you, because this is not good. Sawmills used by like logging camps used with the sawmill production method, which will increase your efficiency massively, and it will also allow you to employ capitalists rather than shopkeepers. And that is good because the previously mentioned reasons, right? So, in the early game, you want to be producing stuff that is construction efficient. So, sulfur mines using dynamite, gold mines, and iron mines and coal mines and all of the mines, and of course sawmills. In the like mid game, when you unlock automatic irrigation, plantations actually become very, very efficient, adding a lot of value. Plantations also like dye plantations and like mainly opium plantations, right? Produces very, very like lucrative goods. So building a lot of, when you unlock automatic irrigation, building a lot of plantations, if you have the colonies to do it, is very advisable, because these will increase your GDP very, very quickly if the price is not very depressed. Mines, if you have atmospheric engine, mind you. Mines without atmospheric engine is very bad, but if you have an atmospheric engine or even better condensing pump, then mines are super good, especially sulfur mines, if you can keep the sulfur price high. So sawmills, mines, anything that is resource extraction in general is very good in the early game, and you sprinkle in some factors, obviously, to have somewhere for all of that sulfur to go from that you produce. In the late game, however, we have other sets of priorities. We have 4 overarching goals in the late game as well. These are, in no particular order: reach full employment, maximize innovation gain and tech spread, colonize and secure important resources, mainly gold, opium, rubber, and oil, and to push standard of living and wages through automation and laws to increase migration to keep growing. So this is in this part of the game, you are starting to run into other issues that are not present in the early game. You're starting to run into issues with, like, you're starting to where you have no peasants in certain states and no unemployed. So there you are actually have a labor shortage, which means that you are not looking for buildings that are construction efficient, because you don't really care about construction efficiency as much anymore, because you are caring what is pop efficient, as in how much value can I add per population, because this has become your most precious resource. In the early game, construction is one of your most precious resources. You only have like sub 100 construction, which you need to be using efficiently, because you like every construction point kind of counts and is important to get the snowball rolling. In the mid to late game, you have a lot of construction, but you generally don't have the population to support it if you don't play like an Asian country, or like the Great Qing or the Sikh Empire or India. You eventually start to run out of pops eventually, because you are constructing so much manufacturing and giving people so much jobs that you need to be thinking about what is mostly pop efficient. What gives me the most value per population? Because so this means that your priorities shift somewhat. Sawmills, like logging camps used on the sawmill like production method, it was the best building in the game in the early game. All of a sudden, it is not that great anymore, because it cannot provide a wage good enough, even with all of the automation like Steam Donkey or God forbid chainsaw and rail transportation activated. They cannot provide a good enough wage to compete with factories that uses a lot of automation production methods. Mainly like factories that have like rotary valve engine, assembly lines in the very late game, water tube boiler. Mines and resource extraction really lack enough automation production method to be viable to push wages higher, and to provide more value per worker. So in the late game, resource extraction is still important, but it is more important to be using your population efficiently. This will also increase the standard of living, because using less people to produce the same amount of stuff will increase their wages, and therefore it will improve their lives, because they will be able to buy more stuff. Which means that standard of living will increase, which means that people will start to move to your country, because oh look, like this is a great country to live in, because we get a better wage and have a better life. So this is how you try to solve this labor shortage conundrum that you have caused for yourself. So that's why factories and like even though they are like very expensive to construct, like steel mills and motor industries and whatnot, they are very, very expensive to construct. I think steel mills takes 800 construction in comparison to like I think sawmills take 200 construction. That it's 4 times the construction to be producing. I think mines use 400 construction, I think. Sorry about that. 400 construction. A general manufacturer takes 600 construction, and then you have the very expensive manufacturers that take 800 construction. These are like steel mills mainly, motor industries mainly. I think explosive factories as well, fertilizer plants as well. Even though those are expensive to construct, those are generally pop efficient. So you cannot be looking at the graph that I showed earlier in the same manner anymore, because this is on a per construction basis. You want efficiency at a per population basis instead, which mainly means the buildings that has a lot of automation, production method, rotary valve engine, assembly lines and whatnot. And like I mentioned, when you in the late game, you're generally your political clout gets less important because you're probably already past the most important laws for you. You have abolished slavery, you have abolished serfdom, you are on like interventionism or laissez-faire, or you're even moving into communism. So changing your political clout is less of a problem, and you should be focusing on what does my market, what does my economy actually need. You're starting to move into territory where, okay, I need rubber to be using in my tooling manufactories. I need oil to be using in a lot of like for my mines, or to use in your war industry, or to be using in automation technology. So you want to be expanding into regions in the world that has oil, or your military or your pops start using opium because they can afford opium instead of alcohol. So you want to be moving into like Central Asia or whatnot to get opium, or you use opium in your military. So in the late game, you have built up most of your core provinces. You are starting to have like a colonial empire to support all of the manufacturers that goes on at home, with colonies in like Africa or Asia that provides you with rubber, oil, gold, or oil, or opium. If you really want the meta build, it's to take these provinces in South Africa for all of that gold. You want to be having provinces in West Africa to get all of that sweet rubber and oil. You want provinces in Central Asia that provides opium, a lot of like populations like dye plantations, and you want. I think we should have a small recap. So in the early game, you have 4 main goals: to de-peasantfy your population, as in provide them with jobs that is better and have a higher wage. You want to be producing buildings that is capitalist owned, or employs intelligentsia like universities, to increase political clout that you need to enact very important laws, and to decrease the power of the landowners, which will try to stop you. You want buildings and goods that supports your ever-growing construction sector. That means a steel industry, an iron industry, a logging industry, and a coal industry to start off your like industrialization project. And you want buildings that most efficiently will add to your investment pool. So that is buildings that is owned by capitalists that you know will be profitable and that is fast to construct. For example, logging camps using the sawmill construction or electric sawmill production method is the best example of this. Sawmills in the early game is probably, except from gold mines, probably the best building in the game to be building for all of those reasons alone. In the late game, however, we have 4 overarching goals, but that are quite different. You want to be working towards reaching full employment, and after you reached full employment, you want to be using buildings that have a lot of automation possibility to increase the amount of value you add per worker. Every clothing, every like glass, porcelain, everything that uses less population to be producing the same amount of stuff is good for you, because they will be earning a higher wage and will push your standard of living up, and that will increase migration. You want to be maximizing innovation gain and tech spread, as in you are in a position where you have a large construction sector and you have a lot of money and a large tax base, which means that you can afford large and tall, like states with you can build universities very tall at maximizing the throughput bonus of in the universities by building 51 of them. Maybe in your capital to make sure that the intelligentsia have a large political influence in your country, so you can push more liberal laws, and to get ahead in technology, which is very important. You are already doing well economically, now you need to do well technologically as well. And you should be thinking about your colonization game. You already have good employment at home. You have well-developed states. Now you need to support them with input goods that have started to becoming very relevant in the late game, like rubber, like gold, like opium, and like oil. If you have a lot of oil and opium and rubber and gold, you essentially are running the game on cheat codes, because those buildings are so very efficient and are so, like, you can, if you reach those technologies, that you can utilize oil and opium and rubber to its full potential, as well as gold mines that are keep being relevant throughout the game. If you can get hold of them, you are looking for a very efficient economy. So in the mid to late game, you should be looking out for, do I need colonies in Western Africa to get that rubber? Do I need colony? Can I get Transvaal or any other of these states to get some massive gold production? Can I get states in Central Asia or China or somewhere else they can be producing a lot? They can support a lot of plantations, dye plantations, and open plantations and other plantations if you want them. Plantations in the late game are very efficient building, and since you don't care about the political clout anymore, you can allow yourself to be building them, because like the political clout in your colonies are not adding that much like influence to your political scene anyway. So I think that is it. I hope that you learned something. If you like what I'm doing, please press that like button, press subscribe, and if you are interested in the spreadsheet, I will link it in the description below. If you haven't checked out Generalist Gaming yet, I heavily implore you to do so. He is a very good content creator. He is one of my favorite content creators in Victoria 3 period, and he is the one who provides this very nice spreadsheet for the community. Go watch his content, say hi for me, and good luck in your future Victoria 3 endeavors using math and your new knowledge. Goodbye.